This is the quick start guide to loop scheduling for homeschoolers. I'm here with one of my very best friends, Pam Barnhill.
Hi, everybody.
Pam and I have been talking about loop scheduling amongst ourselves, trying to get ready for our next homeschool year. And so we've been brainstorming different ways to use a loop schedule, trying to figure out why and how it would work. And peeking around to see how other homeschoolers are using loop schedules in their homeschool. So we thought this would be super fun. And there are people here from all over the world. So we've got people from Morocco, it looks like, Quebec, all over the United States, Hawaii. Wow, yeah, there's a whole bunch of us here. So welcome. What a party. How fun.
I feel like I should have on a hat or something. You know, like dog and go, dog, go. I need a party hat.
I have coffee. Does that count as party?
Yeah.
Okay, well, very good. So loop scheduling. The first question, of course, is what is a loop schedule? And really a loop schedule is just a way of scheduling your tasks based on frequency rather than on a calendar. So rather than saying you're going to do history Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you determine how frequently you want to do history in relation to your other subjects and schedule it on a loop. We're going to show you some examples of how to do that, actually a whole bunch of examples of how to do that. So Pam, do you want to talk a little bit about, or do you want to show an example first, or do you want to talk about why a loop schedule might be helpful?
Yeah, let's show an example first, because I think an example is probably one of the very best ways to understand exactly what a loop schedule is. So hopefully you can now see my screen and see a sample loop that we've created here. So basically what we have done is we've decided that we wanted to loop 4 subjects. In this loop, we are looping science, geography, history, and nature study. And if you notice, we've listed them all out here in the order that we're going to do them. But one of the first things you're probably going to notice is that they're on the list in different frequencies. When I was sitting down and making this loop, I decided that I wanted to do science 2 times for every 1 time that I did nature study. I also wanted to do history 2 times for every 1 time I did nature study. But geography for us is a map drill. So I wanted to do map drill a little more frequently. So you notice that geography is actually on the list 3 times. So what this looks like in my homeschool day is when it comes time for our loop subjects, our designated loop time of the day, I open up my teacher binder and I look and see which subject comes next in our loop. So on the first day, that would obviously be science. If we got done in enough time, we might start and do our geography, close our books, and then the next day when we sat down to work again, we would pick up with history, because that's the next thing on our list. And it very well could be that history would take the entire session that day. And so the next day when we sat down to work, we might do nature study and also have time for geography. And so sure enough, the next day, we would start our loop with science again. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense as to how a loop schedule works.
Yeah, and we'll show you a whole bunch of examples of different ways you can use a loop schedule in all different areas of your homeschool, because some ways may prove more useful for your particular situation than others. The whole idea behind why you would loop instead of just assigning subjects to each day is that life happens and we get interrupted and toddlers get sick and our husbands forget their lunch at work and we have to stop our school day and drive in and to town, and just life happens. And so it's really helpful to be able to move on to the next thing and make sure you're getting to all of the important pieces of your homeschool curriculum without feeling like, wow, every single Monday this month, somebody got sick and we had to go to the doctor or something. And you feel like you're getting really behind, or you're always missing particular subjects or topics. Is that what you would say, Pam, would be the most?
Yeah, most definitely. Because like we used to do science on Thursday or on Thursday. We don't do much on Thursday afternoon because we go to karate at 1 o'clock. But, you know, ideally in our schedule, we should be able to do all of our schoolwork and do science and still have time to eat lunch and get to karate. but I don't know what it was about Thursday. Something would happen. We would get behind. We weren't able to get to the science. And it just felt like, you know, we were getting history done on Mondays and Wednesdays, but we were never getting science done on Thursday. And I just kept feeling further and further behind on that. So by putting these things in a loop schedule, I was able to just do the next thing without ever feeling like I was behind on any one given subject. So I think
I'm going to interrupt real quickly. It looks like from the chat box that some of you are having a hard time seeing the words on the screen, like they're a little bit fuzzy. Don't worry, we'll send you. We could send them those slides as a PDF, right, Pam?
Most definitely.
Okay, so if you can't see them, just hang out and listen with us, and we'll make sure you can see all the examples, and we'll send you an email afterwards and let you be able to see those. So don't stress too much if you can't see.
Yeah, and I'll try to remember to read down the list of what's on the slide as well. So
perfect.
Yeah, I want to bring up a point. When all of my local girlfriends and I started talking last year about loop scheduling, I think one of the misconceptions that some people had was that they could use loop scheduling to fit more in their day. And so I actually had one friend, and she got really excited about this whole concept because there were things that she really wanted to do that she just didn't feel like she had time to do. And so she created this beautiful loop schedule with things like composer study and picture study and a few different other things on there to add to her homeschool day. And when I was telling her about this webinar, she said to me, "Oh, I tried that loop scheduling thing and it didn't work." And I'm like, "Oh, well, why didn't it work?" She says, "We just never got around to doing it." Well, when I got down to the nitty gritty and was talking to her about it, she was doing morning time. She was doing her regular skill area subjects, and she has a lot of little kids, so she's, you know, teaching 2 kids how to read and doing math with 3 kids and that kind of thing. And then on top of that, she was doing like a unit study, a geography, like a big elaborate geography unit study, which her family loved and had a great time with. And then she was trying to put the loop on top of that.
Right.
Yeah, so it was no wonder that the loop wasn't getting done. You know, so I think the important thing to realize is that loop scheduling doesn't really create any more time for you.
Yeah.
It creates peace for you. So if you have a day that's already really full and you throw this kind of loop on top of it, the loop scheduling doesn't mean more subjects are going to get done. It just means you're going to feel more at ease about the things you do have to get done.
Right. So simplifying your schedule or your homeschool, whatever you're doing in your homeschool, scaling it back to those most important things, and then using a loop schedule in order to take those on in a way that still makes you a peaceful, refreshed kind of homeschool mom, not always stressed out, not always feeling behind. That's the key to a loop schedule. A loop schedule isn't, let's find a way to schedule so we can cram more stuff in, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, her loop might have worked if she had done, you know, her geography unit study one day and then her loop schedule the next day and kind of alternated and kind of looped the big loops. But yeah, just trying to add more in the day, that was not working.
So I think what you're saying basically is the underlying principle, and this is one of the things we've kind of talked about a lot lately, is the underlying principle of looping is do the next thing. So a loop schedule just helps us schedule out how to do the next thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right.
Okay, well, in all of our conversations, you and I came up with a few principles that are, I guess they're more like keys to creating a successful loop. And we're going to show you a whole bunch of more examples in a minute, but I think it might be helpful to see the keys to creating a good, successful loop, what needs to be there. Do you want to go there, Pam, next?
Yeah, let's just talk about them one by one.
Okay.
So the very first thing I think that's a key to building a successful loop is just starting with one loop. You know, starting very simple. So maybe you start with language arts. Language arts is a great thing to loop. And we're going to show you a sample language arts loop later because language arts is made up of all of these different subjects that you have to do. So maybe starting with just a language arts loop or a morning time loop for different subjects you would like to put inside your morning time and have time to get to more subjects peacefully there. Content area subjects are great for looping, things like science and history. You could create a content area loop or maybe even a fine arts loop that you do even just once a week. you could do a fine arts loop and loop through. One week you end up doing maybe chalk pastels, and the next week you end up doing composer study, and the next week you end up doing picture study or something like that. So a fine arts loop. So start simple with one kind of loop at first.
I like that because my tendency is like, okay, we're going to do this loop thing. So I'm going to loop everything. So I try to loop language arts and then a fine arts Friday and then and it just gets overwhelming. But I think if you pick one area that is feeling a little bit stressful to you and decide to move to a loop schedule there and see how that works and kind of play with it a little bit, that will probably be a better way to get started with it. Or even that just might be the best way to use it all together. Because you can use loop scheduling with any other kind of, a year-round schedule or a block schedule or any other kind of way that you might organize your homeschool schedule. It's just one more method to help I guess not really simplify, but just make it more peaceful for you to get to those really important things. So starting with one's a great idea. And another one that we talked about was just putting a few things in your loop. This is the mistake I made the very first time I tried to loop a couple of years ago. I thought of everything that wasn't reading, writing, or math. I mean, everything, like Shakespeare, poetry, science, nature study, history, grammar. I laid it all out and I put it on this one huge long loop, and it was a disaster. I didn't feel like we were able to cycle through the loop often enough to make it feel like it was really working for us.
Yeah. And I've had this problem before too, where I had science on the loop. And so we were working through the science curriculum, and we would do science, and then there would be like 3 or 4 things in between the 2 science days, the first science we did and the next time we were going to do it. And then, of course, because life happens, we would miss a day or two. It would be like 7 days before we got back to science again. And it would feel like forever since we had done science. So between all of the subjects that I had stuffed in that loop and the fact that life happens, which is why we're doing loop scheduling to begin with, it just took forever. My kids would they're like, science? We talked about this before? What is this? So there was just too many things in there. So I think keeping it simple is great. I have a friend named Julia, and she has a really great simple loop that I wanted to point out to you guys. She has 4 things in her loop, and there are just 4 different programs that she felt like were writing intensive for her son. This is what all of these programs have in common, is she felt like they caused her 9-year-old son to have to do a lot of writing. So she didn't want to try to do any of those on the same day or at the same time. And so what she did was she created a loop schedule, and she loops 4 days a week. She has 4 subjects, but what makes it a loop is that if they miss a day or if they miss 2 days, when they sit down to loop again, they just pull the next subject from the box and do it. So that's probably one of the most simple applications of a loop schedule right there. 4 days, 4 subjects, but no subject assigned to a specific day. You're just starting with the next one when you get to the next day that you can do loop subjects.
So on an ideal week when everything is going really smoothly, you'd probably, if you only had 4 things in your loop, you'd probably be able to hit all of them that week. But then on a week that Grandma and Grandpa come to visit or something, then maybe you only hit 2, and that's okay. The following week, you just pick up where you left off and you keep going, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what she does, And for her, it's 1 subject per loop session, and then they're done and they stop. I know for us, we sometimes do multiple subjects in a loop session. So if we've got, on any given day, we might have between 45 minutes to an hour and a half to work on our loop subjects. So some days we only get to 1 subject, but other days we might get to 2. We hardly ever got to 3, but.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got begin with just 1 loop, put just a couple of things in a loop. And I know we're getting questions about the kinds of things, the kind of subjects that we should put in a loop. We'll get there very soon. Let's talk about making procedures for subjects that aren't open and go. So anything where you're not just pulling out your book and doing the next thing.
Yes. Okay. Writing procedures. This was something I came up with last year, And I'm a genius. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, you are.
Because this really helped me. Hold on, I'm trying to screen share again. Okay, let's see.
Yep, there you are.
Okay, yeah, now I'm trying to go to the next slide. Let me see. Of course, it's not going to let me do that. Hold on one second. Let's see. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, so what I found was after I had done all of my planning and everything is I would sit down to do a subject in my loop that wasn't necessarily an open and go subject. And I would flounder and I would be a little bit lost, and it made the loop schedule process very stressful for me. That even though I knew the subject I was supposed to do the next day, I didn't exactly know, have it all written out what I was supposed to do the next day. And so I came up with this idea of making procedures for these subjects. And so this is a history procedure I made for Story of the World. And so what this is are 5 tasks that I wanted us to do whenever we did history in our loop. So I'm going to just kind of read through them quickly for the people who are having trouble seeing them. We would write the names and places on a whiteboard. We would listen to the chapter while completing the coloring page. One of the kids would provide an oral narration of part of the chapter, and I would question them as needed. We would then look up the topic in the Usborne Encyclopedia of World History and view any interesting internet links. And then we would complete the map work. So this was just a little reminder to jog my memory that when my loop schedule said history, this was what I was supposed to do for the next chapter. And it kept me from getting stressed out that I had this in my teacher notebook.
I love that because I would oftentimes on my loop, or even if I wasn't even using a loop, just a regular schedule, it'll say history. And I think because maybe I didn't get very much sleep the night before, or I'm cranky, or the toddlers are cranky, which means I'm cranky. I see history, and because I don't have an exact procedure, I have to use way too much brain power to think, wait, what do we need for history? And what do I need to get out? And then what do we need to do? And that can be really tiring. And so I'm totally going to do this year.
Yeah, you're right. It does. I mean, it's too many decisions to have to make at the last minute. And so what I've tried to do, what you call it, decision fatigue. And so what I've tried to do is eliminate all decision fatigue from the planning process by writing out exactly the things that we're supposed to do each and every time. And it just helps because so often we're just busy and tired and distracted, and having to sit there and decide, okay, what is it we're doing for history today, just makes it worse. And so I also put up on the screen another sample. I'm not going to read through this one. We'll have it in the PDF, but this is a geography procedure. And so this is very simple for you to do for subjects in your loop that you don't have a workbook for. I would definitely do this for if you're doing like a picture study or a composer study, anything like that in your loop. I would definitely create this kind of procedure.
Okay, read that procedure for anybody who can't see it, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and read it. This is a geography procedure. So mom would read from a state book while the children were labeling a regional map with state names and capitals and tracing the map on tracing paper, coloring the bird. And we had a specific page that we used. So they would color the bird and flower page and draw something in the box to help them remember the state. Then we would watch a video on YouTube and then do map work for the state map from the handbook that we were using. So this was totally referring to specific curriculum that we had, but the curriculum wasn't telling me what to do each time we sat down to do the subject.
I love this because I think it makes curriculum that's not really open and go, because then I can still use the living books that I want to use and the maybe Charlotte Mason methods that I want to use, but someone's telling me what to do every day. Whereas that's what draws me about open and go curriculum, is that I don't have to use so much brain power every single day to know what to do, and we just keep making progress. I just love this. Yeah. So you would make a procedure for each thing in your loop, and that didn't have an already structured idea or structure instead of, wow, that's a terrible thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what I mean. Yes, make a loop for anything that you don't have set instructions for, or make a procedure, and then you'll have it. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. Okay, so then we had one more key for a successful loop, which was to write it on our daily to-do. Building a habit basically by starting at a time when we know we can commit to working on the loop every day for a couple of weeks. Do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, okay. I don't know how many of you guys ease into your school year. So let's say this summer you're all excited about loop scheduling and you're going to create yourself a loop. Well, I'm here to tell you from practice that sometimes starting a loop and sticking with it, you know, can be a little daunting. You forget to do it. It's something new and different you're adding to your day. So one of the things I think that makes it really easy to do is to ease into your school year by doing, like, I'm going to start this week and I'm going to do math and my loop. And, you know, that's what I'm going to do for 2 or 3 days. And then maybe I'm going to add in math, reading, and my loop, you know, and just make sure that, especially during those first 2 to 3 weeks, that you've really blocked out anything that might happen in your schedule, you know, no early dentist appointments, no, nothing that's going to happen early in your day. So you can really focus on getting that loop done and building that habit. And then once you've established the habit, I think it's easier to keep up with it. And then I have another trick. Can I show you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, let's get back to the screen share.
Misty's saying in the chat box that easing into her school year revolutionized their consistency when she made herself do it. I have this tendency too to want, I mean, once I get everything going, like planned out, I'm like, okay, we're going in full bore, which never works well. So I don't know why I'm always tempted to do it. But I would say I have the same experience as Misty when on the times that I have actually eased in by saying, you know, math and a loop, or, you know, 2 things, and then the next week we'll add 1 more thing, and the next week we'll add 1 more thing. Those years go so much better.
Or even just after 3 days, you know, if you feel like, oh, I can't wait a whole week, let me just do it after 3 days. You know, that's a good way to do it. And that's one of the reasons we start school a full month before our co-op starts.
Okay.
Because we ramp up, you know, the entire process. And then by the time we get to the week that we're adding co-op, it's not like, you know, I start school on Monday morning, and then the very next day we go to our first co-op and everybody's doing everything all at once. So,
okay, so Pam, I know you can't see the chat box, but everybody's agreeing with you that you're a genius.
Oh, okay. Well, yay. I love you. Okay, so here's another thing, and we're going to steal that. You know, there are a lot of things in public school that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. But here's another great idea. Starting school on a Wednesday or a Thursday the very first week. Mm-hmm. And then that way, and public schools do this a lot of the time, and this was awesome when I was a teacher, because you would go in and you're going to do your school for 2, maybe 3 days, and then you're going to get a weekend and you're going to get a break.
Yep.
So that's another great way. I mean, that's kind of off the topic of loop scheduling, sorry, but it's another great way to ease into the school year.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to show this particular sheet. This is.
You might have to zoom in on that too.
Okay, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Is that helpful, or is it getting more blurry?
I can see it clear. I don't know about our audience, but, you know, don't forget, we will send you pictures. We'll send you the whole slide deck so you can see it all.
Right. Okay, so this is incredibly ugly, but this is putting it on your to-do list. For those of you who like to check boxes, this is how you can do a loop schedule. So what I did is I just went into my spreadsheet program, and I created a spreadsheet. And you can see here were the subjects of my loop. And I promise we did more than the ones I checked off. So I just stopped. I get real lazy about pulling out my teacher binder. And then, you know, I've got to guess at attendance later. Does anybody else do this? Is this just me? Where you're like,
just
yes, you did school this
day. The rest of us are not lazy at all. So
I know the truancy police are going to come get me now. But so
they're watching, I'm sure.
What I did down the left-hand side was I just put all the subjects. This was our loop. So science, history, Shakespeare, geography, science, mapping, history, science. This was the loop that we were missing some stuff. I felt like we weren't getting to science enough. Okay, so the subjects are listed down the side, and this went on for like 3 pages. I listed every possible instance that I thought we were going to do science for the year, or this loop for the year in this spreadsheet. And then on the other side, you see the lesson plan, what we're supposed to be doing down the other side. So like geography is the one that changes most. You can see there's Maine, there's New Hampshire, there's Vermont, those kinds of things. And I would just open this up and look at it and know that, okay, science, week 1, day 1, we would do it, we would check it off. History, read the chapter section, coloring page map work, do it, check it off. Shakespeare, lesson 1. Somewhere I had a sheet that had what lesson 1 was on it. Check it off. Geography, Maine. Hey, we're going to follow that procedure I wrote, do Maine, and check it off. And honestly, that's probably about the point where I felt like I could stop checking it off and just do the next thing. I didn't really need it to help me build the habit anymore. But if you're a box checker, I think that's probably a great way to do a loop schedule.
I think so too. And what I love about this, as opposed to a set of lesson plans you might get from a curriculum provider at the beginning of a year, which is there's nothing wrong with using those. But what I like about this is that you're not behind. So whenever I've tried to use a complete lesson plan, I'm always behind by October. It's just so demoralizing. And so I love this, that you just keep moving forward. And and I like checking boxes.
Yeah. Now, I would have to say, if I were doing this over, I would put fewer subjects in this loop. I think I had, too much going on. But it is, I would still make the table again and check off the little boxes. So.
And I see some people in the chat box saying, well, that's a lot of planning. Yeah, I've never had a loop that looks that well planned. So here's where Pam and I are a little different personality wise.
Yeah, well, okay. So in my defense, week 1, the science stuff, that was all this. I'm just referring myself back to the science lesson plans that came with the science curriculum we bought. And then, the other stuff was, I'm referring myself to the procedure that I wrote. And I think those procedures are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
So to me, it was a lot better to make all of those decisions on the front end in the summer than try to do it when I'm, trying to deal with the 5-year-old throughout the school year. So, but to each
and it goes back to decision fatigue, I think, because I know that if I'm already in the middle of kind of a stressful morning or a stressful school year, and I'm trying to make decisions, my own default is always, well, that's enough. We've done enough, which is not really helpful when you're trying to keep moving things forward. So doing some extra work on the front end, I think it does go a long way. I'm not nearly as good at it as Pam. So my loops, if you're feeling just at all discouraged by that list, I think most of you in the chat box are saying you love it. But if you're feeling all discouraged by it, my loops have never looked that planned. So you can kind of make them, we'll give you some more examples here. You can see how loosey-goosey we can get with some loops.
And keep in mind that I did not sit and type all of this out. This was a lot of copy and paste, referring myself to other things that I had done. So, don't feel like I sat here, slaved away. I copied and pasted a lot. It's the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about maybe how you would plan a loop. You want to do that?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
I want to tackle one question I did see in the chat box, which was math. Where would you put math in a loop? And I believe, Pam, that you'd agree with me that we would not put math in a loop. So we'd only put subjects in the loop that don't need to happen every single day. So anything you want to happen every day is separate. You make a spot for that in your schedule. Math happens at 10 or whatever. But the loop is for things that you want to happen regularly, but that don't need to happen every single day.
Right. Yes. I would not put math in a loop at all. I would not put Latin in a loop. Or any foreign language in a loop if you're doing Spanish or French or something like that.
Music practice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the things, phonics for a young child would never go in a loop because those are the things that you need the skill practice on. You need regular practice on every single day. So yeah, wouldn't put them in a loop. Okay, do we want to move on to maybe talking a little bit about planning a loop?
Yep, let's go.
Okay, I am going back to screen share. Sarah's making me do all the hard work.
I am. I just get to sit here and drink my coffee.
Okay. All right. Hopefully, Sarah, can you see the schedule planning?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So this is one of the forms that is in my free planning kit, and we're just going to send it to you. We'll send it to you with the slides. But this is the loop schedule planning form in one of the free Plan Your Year kit forms. And so what I do when I sit down to plan a loop is I at first start by listing out the subjects that I want to do in the loop and then the frequency that I want to do them at. So let's say, let's just play with language arts. So let's say in language arts, I know I need to teach writing, and maybe I'm going to do writing 2 times. Now what I'm thinking about in my head are ratios. What is the ratio that I'm going to do writing to the other subjects that I'm going to put in this loop? We need to do spelling because I have one who needs a lot of practice in spelling. And so we're going to do that fairly often. We need to have literature discussions about the books that she's reading. But, you know, we can really get away with doing that about once a week. Or 1 time for every 2 to 3 times we're going to do these other things. And then what else, Sarah? What am I for grammar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I've listed the subjects in my loop at the top, and notice that you can type in these and you can save them too. It's really kind of cool. And then the frequency down the side. And so now I'm actually going to start planning my loop schedule down here. And I'm going to
hang on. If you're wondering where you can get these pages to, we'll let you know. So don't. These are all pages that Pam has created that you can actually type in yourself or print out and write in yourself. And we'll tell you how to get those in a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put in writing. Let's see, spelling. I'm going to skip literature discussion and go with grammar. All right, and then I'll put the literature discussion. And that's the only time, because I'm doing it 1 time. Okay, and then I need to do writing again because I'm doing it 3 or 2. I need to do spelling again. Let's see. Grammar. And then spelling 1 more time. And I could change the order of these. If I felt like the spellings were too close together, I could stick it here as well. But that quickly, I just made a loop for language arts. And when we sat down to do language arts for the day, we might spend, 45 minutes to an hour doing language arts. And we would just start with writing. And that might be all we got to that day, just depending on how long you're going to spend, the age of your student. The next day, we might be able to do spelling, grammar, and literature discussion, just depending on how long the lesson took, what their understanding was. And then the next day, we might sit down and only do writing again. So that would be how that particular loop would work.
Yeah, so this would be, you'd have language arts, say, on your schedule for every day at 10:30. Let's say that's your language arts loop, and you sit down at 10:30 and you just start wherever you left off on your loop, and maybe you have 20 minutes or 30 minutes blocked off on your schedule. You work for 30 minutes wherever you are in your loop. So maybe on your writing day, that's all you do for 30 minutes, depending on the program you use for writing. But then the next day when you sit down, you could probably do your spelling and your grammar because you have 30 minutes blocked out for your language arts loop. And then the following day, it's time for a literature discussion. So that's kind of how it looks like. You still have the time blocked off on your calendar, but the actual content that you're working through each day loops.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Perfect.
All right. Let's see. I am going to leave screen share. Okay, so do we want to see just a couple sample loops before we take some questions?
Yeah, and let me just give everyone a heads up because I told you it's just 30 minutes, but you all know me better than that, right? We just have so much to share. So it will be sending everything to you on a replay, but we have some really great examples we're going to show you, and then we're going to take some questions. So stick around with us if you can. And yeah, it looks like everybody is sticking around. So we're happy about that. But I just want to let you know, I know it's been over 30 minutes, but I don't think you want us to cut it short. Probably we have some good examples to show you. So
we're sorry. We're really long-winded. We apologize. Okay. All right. Oh, now I need to zoom out. Hold on just 1 second, please. All right. So this is a language arts loop schedule, just like the one I showed you on the sample that I made on the form. So pretty much the exact same thing that we just talked about, where we have spelling 3 times, literature once, and writing a couple times, and then grammar 1 time on this particular loop. So that would be one that you could work through. This is a morning time loop schedule. Let's say you had a few minutes set aside in your morning time, either daily or even just a couple of times a week, that you wanted to do, you wanted to have a specific subject in there, but you didn't want it to be the same subject every time. So you could do a loop similar to this one, where you did picture study, composer study, drawing, map drill, and poetry and poet study. And once you got, let's say you did it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during your morning time, and you were going to commit about 20 minutes to whichever activity it was. When you sat down, you would just look at your list and pick up and do the next one in your loop.
And this is a great way. I know we've seen some questions in the chat box about how to use looping with multiple ages, and this is one really great way to do that. You can loop all those things that you can do with a wide variety of ages, like picture study and composer study and map drill and that kind of thing. You can loop them during your morning time. And I actually am doing this because it helps me keep morning time short, which I need to do because I have like a whole army of toddlers. So it's really helpful for me to be able to do 15 minutes of read aloud and 15 minutes of the morning time loop.
Right. All right. And then, Sarah, you and I were talking about this, the religious reading loops sample. So, a lot of times, we do read from scripture daily. It's part of our morning prayers, or your family might do a morning devotion or something like that. But you also want to do things like Bible stories, where you're really steeping your children in those Bible stories, and then either a saint or a missionary story, and then either something from the catechism, or Sarah's great at finding these wonderful catechism stories like St. Patrick's Summer and things like that. Well, I want to read all of those to my kids. I don't want to have to pick just one to read to them. And so by creating a loop for these, when I sit down and do quote unquote religious reading, when that's on my schedule, probably during morning time or something, I can just, today pick up and read from the Bible and read a Bible story. Tomorrow, pick up a saint book and read them a saint story. The next day, one of those catechism stories, and then cycle back around to the Bible again, and just constantly pick up the next one and pick up where we left off.
I really like this because I have done it before, where for a whole term, I'll think we'll read Bible stories, and for the next term, we'll read from a catechism. And even if you have a really great adventure catechism like St. Patrick's Summer, it can be, it just helps to mix it up a little bit to have a loop. And so I really like this because then I know we're getting to some Bible reading and some stories of saints and some catechism and that kind of thing all year. And it just feels a little bit fresher instead of feeling like we're kind of beating one book to death.
Yeah. And you can do this with any kind of books. It doesn't just have to be, religious books. What were you telling me about read alouds? And we were talking the other day about the history. You wanted to read literature to your children
yes,
during one read aloud time, but during another read aloud time, you wanted to be able to hit things like science biographies and historical fiction.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I did last year is I started a loop for read aloud time. And I thought, I'll pick these. I want to read these books during this term, during read aloud. I want to read a history, something historical fiction. I want to read a literary classic of some kind, like Wind in the Willows or something. I want to read a science biography and a religious book of some kind. What I found was when I was looping them, first of all, we wanted to read our literature selection every day. Everybody wanted to. You can't pick up The Green Ember and read it once a week. It will kill your children. So they want you to read it every day. So what I did is I pulled that part out. So 15 minutes at night, we would read then the literature book every single day. And then in the morning read aloud time, we would cycle between maybe a science biography and a historical fiction book. And I probably wouldn't put too many other books in that loop, because if you wait too many days between reading chapters of a book. Well, it's up to you. I know some people actually do only read about a chapter a week from each book, and they go for the whole year. But I don't really like doing things that way. It kind of drives me a little bit nuts not to keep going. And I know we're all kind of, where were we and what was going on in this story? So I would loop maybe 2 other read alouds, like a history book, a historical fiction, and a science biography, and loop those during your morning read aloud time, maybe during lunchtime while everyone's eating. And then your literature book at a completely different time where you can loop it every day. That's what we've done with more success than trying to loop a lot of different read alouds at the same time.
Right. And I think it's just important to realize that books can be looped as well. Pretty much anything can be looped. And you said something very important there. If you're going to loop reading, where were we and what was going on? So anytime you sit down to open up that book, if you're looping 2 or 3 books, you might be concerned, are they going to get things mixed up? And so this is the literature teacher in me coming out. When you sit down to read the next chapter, be sure you review and remember what happened in the last chapter of that book. Take 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Hey, do you remember what happened last time we were reading? Have them kind of go over it, and that kind of sets everybody to get ready to read the next chapter of the book.
I really like doing that just because sometimes my kids who don't seem like they're paying very much attention are the ones that remember the best.
Nice. I like it. I like it.
Okay, show us another one.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Awesome. Oh, that's right. Yes, we did. You already did the religious reading loop. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of different examples. Maybe we've got a bunch of questions. Do we want to start just?
Oh, yeah, we want to answer questions.
Yes, we do. Can loop scheduling work for middle school age kids, or is it really just appropriate for elementary?
Oh, I think it worked for anybody.
I do too. High school. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I mean, if you were having to record a certain number of hours or credits for science or something for high school, you're going to have to finagle it a little bit with keeping track of how often you hit your loop. Maybe you only check it off after they do an hour of science or something. I don't have a high schooler yet, neither does Pam, so we haven't had to do that quite yet. But you're going to have to finagle it a little bit to make sure that you're doing your record keeping that you need to do. But if a loop is really just a way to schedule things without assigning a particular date to them, then really I think you can do them with any age.
Right, right. And you have to look at what your needs are. And so, yeah, it might get a little trickier. I would probably make a spreadsheet.
I would not.
Where I would track the hours.
I would write it on the back of a napkin. No, I'm just
and then wipe somebody's nose with it.
Okay, what about I've seen a couple questions about how old your kids are. So my kids are my oldest is a middle schooler. She'll be an 8th grader this next school year. And I've got all the way down to knee level, knee high people. Pam, what about your kids?
I have 10, I have 8, and I have 5.
Yeah. And then you taught for a long time too. So you've got lots of experience with teaching older kids.
Yeah, I never got to do loop schedules. Well, you know what? I don't know that I would necessarily say that. I taught language arts. I probably did loop.
Without knowing it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Heather wants to know if you complete more than one subject per day when using a loop schedule.
Yeah, sometimes. It just depends on the amount of time you have allotted to work on your loop and how long a certain subject takes. So, map drill for us can usually be done where we're practicing tracing a map and labeling it. That usually takes about 10 minutes. And so then we could move on to the next subject. So. Okay.
I think there are a whole slew of people who are enamored with your teacher notebook and your planning lists. And so what they want to know is how you find time to plan and how you exactly do that. Do you make a chunk of time at the beginning of the summer, or what does planning look like for you?
Oh, definitely. I set aside time in the summer. I try to send my kids to vacation Bible school and then use those hours in the morning to do that. If you don't have that luxury, you might could lock them in the closet or something. And
I use duct tape.
Yeah. Tell your husband you need a couple of evenings to go away, or one of my readers emailed me. She's in a hotel this weekend.
Nice.
So yeah. So because I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it to find that time to get things planned out and straightened out before you're ready to start. it just makes the year so much easier for me.
Okay, so Pam is my absolute favorite person to ask about homeschool scheduling because she's so good at it, as you can see. We've been friends for how long, Pam? 5, 6 years, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and so she's always the person I go to ask when I have questions about how to creatively like finagle our schedule or fit something in or simplify something. And so one of the great things she did last year is she created a homeschool planning kit. If you scroll down your page, you'll actually see it there down there on the page. There's 10, basically she's broken down planning your year into 10 simple steps and she walks you right through them. And what I love most about that book is that it's not cookie cutter. And so she helps you figure out, okay, what does my family life look like? What does my school look like? What ages am I working with? And so it's just not cookie cutter. Not everybody is going to fit into the same little mold. And she helps you figure out a schedule that's going to work for your family. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would encourage you to grab her. If you like her planning pages and you're liking her teacher notebook, then you're going to love her planning kit. So make sure you head on over and check that out.
You know, one of the important things is to think outside the box. I mean, we're homeschoolers, so we don't have to do what the public school down the street is doing. And I know it's hard because most of us, you know, a Misty exception, but most of us were in public school for so long and it's very hard to think differently. But that's the beauty of things like loop scheduling and block scheduling and year-round schooling and, you know, starting your year at a different time than in August. You know, just all of those things is we have the luxury of that. And so that's one of the things I like to stress to people is if it works for you, do it, even though it's not, you know, what you've always done.
So Pam, what would you tell somebody who says their kids like predictable schedules? So she's not sure if they all like to just work through a loop rather than know that every science Tuesday is science day or whatever.
Could she print the loop out for them? So could she have the loop posted on the refrigerator or on a bulletin board in the schoolroom or something like that? Maybe slip it in a page protector. And then, so she needs to call that loop time. Hey, it's loop time. Now we're going to get loopy. And then, you know, they can see what's coming up next on the list, pull out the pen, mark it off that day when they're done with it, and then they know what's coming tomorrow because they can see that it's next on the list. You know, provided they can read, you not have to use pictures for your non-readers.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then it's actually very predictable because every day you have loop time and then they can see what's coming. So they're not surprised at what you're going to pull out because if they're a child who likes predictability, they'll probably be a child who checks that list. I have one who probably would check the list pretty pretty constantly. Yeah. And another kid who has no idea what day of the week it is ever. So he wouldn't know. Good. Yeah, we have some questions about what block scheduling is because we have mentioned that a little bit in here. And actually, if you go to edsnapshots.com, is that your latest post, Pam?
No, there's been one more since then, but it's on the homepage right now.
Okay, she just wrote a post that actually compares loop and block scheduling, but we'll also email that out. Let me write that down. We'll email that out to you so you'll see it.
Send them a link to that.
Yep. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. We just have a couple more minutes. So if you have any other questions, make sure you shoot them out. How long does a loop schedule last?
Like how long?
I think maybe and I don't know if this is exactly the question, but maybe the question is, well, I did see a question earlier about what if you want to get through 39 weeks of your science curriculum? How do you schedule that? But the whole point of the loop, well, so how do you make sure you get through the whole book in the year if you're not hitting it on the same day of the week? But then if it's really important to you, I think, if it's really important to you to finish that whole science book and all 39 lessons that year, that may be something you don't want to loop, but you want to put on your calendar, right? Is that what you'd say, Pam?
Maybe. And I remember last year I was dealing with a science curriculum like that. And I ended up doing math to figure it out, which, you know, I had to pull up a calculator. And so I think what I did was I'm trying to think now how I did it. It was so long ago, it was last summer. But I actually did take the number of chapters in my history and take the number of chapters in my science and then add in the extra things I wanted to do. Actually, you know what I did? Once I made that big, long spreadsheet with all of those things in there, then I went back and I think I ended up with like, I don't know, 180 different entries on that spreadsheet. And then I did some math and divided it up and figured out how many days I was going to have to actually complete my loop schedule in order to get all the way through the loop.
Okay. Okay.
So
that makes sense.
you can mathematically figure that out. You can put those things in a loop and mathematically figure that out.
So someone's asking, what if, no, I'm sorry. How much time in a day? 30 minutes or 60 minutes? I think that totally depends on your situation. So I can never, at this season in life with 3 kids, 3 and under, ever pretty much spend more than 30 minutes with a child on a subject. So my loops are never going to be more than 30 minutes right now. Now, when I had just 3 older kids, before we had all these toddlers, I probably could see myself doing a 60-minute loop in the afternoon, maybe that's where we do history and loop history and science. But I wouldn't do that anymore. So it kind of depends on your situation, what you're going to loop. If you're going to loop language arts, or if you're going to loop read aloud, or what kind of loop you're going to use. So I wouldn't worry so much about having it be a certain length. I would just focus more on blocking out a certain time every day for your loop. And then remember that consistency goes a really long way. So if you hit something for 15 minutes and you're doing it on a regular basis, you're going to make some good progress.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the season of life you're in with the ages of your kids. Now, the nice thing about doing a loop schedule is if you have kids who are 6, 7, 8 years old, that younger age, you're still not, even if you have an hour set aside, an hour block of time for looping, you're going to want to make sure that you arrange your loop in such a way that you're doing about 15 minutes of a subject, and then you move on and you're doing 15 minutes of a different subject, and then 15 minutes of a different subject. So you might get more subjects done, but you're going to want to use that Charlotte Mason philosophy of switching your brain to having them do different things. So you're not expecting them to sit for 3 15-minute periods and listen to you read aloud, but you're going to switch it up a little bit. So maybe you're spending 15 minutes reading history aloud, and then you're actually going to spend 15 minutes playing math games. Maybe math games are in your loop because you want to work those into your schedule. And then you're going to spend 15 minutes listening to science or doing science experiments. So it really depends on the age of your children, how long they're able to sit and focus, those kinds of things. You would use the same discretion in making, or that's not the word I'm looking for, discernment in making that decision as you would about putting any subject on the schedule for your child. You know, how long can they sit?
That would be a fun, actually, loop would be learning games, because we have a lot of learning games and I don't have a good place in the schedule, but I could do 15 minutes or 30 minutes after lunch. We could have a game loop just even for a term and just say we're going to loop through and we're going to play a history game, then we're going to play a math game and just loop through those, and we have game.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Or you could have a loop within a loop where
whoa, wait, what?
You put games in your loop, and then when you get to the game spot in your loop, you loop which games you're going through.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. So you could have, so it ends up being that you play games maybe once a week or whatever, depending on how often you're, Yeah, so
it's called a loop-de-loop.
I'm just scanning here for final questions. Somebody asked me about my homemaking loop, and I do have a post on it. I can send you a link to it. It's basically the same thing we've talked about with homeschooling. I just make a list of all the different things that need to be done regularly, and I go loop through them when I'm taking good care of my house, when I'm being faithful about my homemaking.
I was going to say a homemaking loop would mean I actually had to clean something.
Let's just talk about homeschooling. Oh, lots of people in the chat box are talking about how much they love your Plan Your Year kit. Yes, super wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. So a couple people have said, how many loops can you have going at the same time? And I think we need to go back to that, one of the principles we talked about toward the beginning, which was just start with one.
Start with one, and then when you become a loop expert, you might add another, but start with one for a long time.
And someone wants to know what we're looping, how many loops you and I have going right now, and what we're looping.
None, because it's summer.
Yes, it's summer here. But I've been planning next year, and I haven't gotten really solid yet. It's all kind of just swimming around in my brain. But I think probably what I'm going to be doing for looping next year is looping read alouds like we did this year, just 2 at a time, looping 2 at a time, and probably a morning time loop. And that's probably what we're going to loop. I could see something like a language arts loop being really useful for one of my children, and maybe 2, but I can particularly think of one child who would benefit from having that kind of change up in what they're doing for language arts every day. So
I typically do loop language arts subjects. I don't put writing in that loop because it takes us a little longer to get through writing, so we tend to do that daily. But I do loop the other language arts subjects, and I am going to do the religious reading loop this year. It's going to be within our morning time, but I'm going to do that one. I'm not sure how many more loops I'm going to use because I'm going to do some block scheduling this year. So
okay. Maybe we'll have to do one of these on block scheduling too.
We might have to. Let us know if you want a block scheduling webinar.
Yeah, let us know. Well, we like any excuse to come here and sip coffee and chat. So, well, thank you, everybody. It's been an hour, and you are all awesome. Thank you so much for coming. It's been really fun. We'll send you the slide deck. So in case you weren't able to see any of the examples or you want a refresher on any of those examples, you'll be able to see those and print them out if you want. We'll also send you the video replay. So that will be ready in the next little while. Not going to make any promises. I was about to say tomorrow. That's what I always do. It will be ready soon.
And we'll send them the loop planning form too.
Oh, yes. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you that loop planning form that you saw Pam typing into, we'll send you that form and you can give it a whirl. There's a whole bunch of other planning forms in the Plan Your Year kit. So check those out too, because if the loop planning thing maybe works for 1 or 2 parts of your day or your schedule, but you think you need some other planning forms to help you flesh out that teacher binder, you'll probably find them in the plan. How many forms are in there, Pam?
Well, with the calendars, there's like 40, I think. So
yeah, there is a form for everything you could possibly need to plan for your homeschool year. So thank you. Oh, everyone says block scheduling. Oh goodness, there's a lot of people who want a block scheduling webinar. We'll work on it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pam. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thanks, Sarah. I always love to chat with you.